Good afternoon, everyone. Wayne Hall here. Let's get underway. I got some feedback on the last time I did the Working from Queensland results, and someone said it, named Linda Bull, said it was very dry and boring. So I've tried to make it a little bit shorter than last time. So I'm not going to go through all the results we've got. There's a heap of them, but just try and pick out some of the highlights. And there's still a few slides to get through. Okay, so there's three things I want to cover today, as obviously go through the Working from Queensland survey. Want to spend a bit of time on questions. We've got some come through already, and Greg will no doubt pick up some more questions as we go along, and then just a few other items to finish off on. So look, this is the response rates we had this year. So overall, DAF had 75, agriculture 74. We're a little bit lower than that, but that's okay. It was higher than last year, and it was significantly higher than last year, but still a little bit lower than the year before. And you can see we've got there the breakdown by the various groups. We expect RI to always have a little bit less because not necessarily all their staff are sitting down at computers for extended periods of time. So not too bad at all. And we've got some high-level results here. So these are basically where they've aggregated questions to around the subjects there. So agency engagement, for example, and they aggregate those questions. And you can see the results there. We've got where people have agreed, they're neutral, or they've disagreed. So the green, yellowish colour, and the red. And then in those last three columns, we've got versus. So this is all of ASQ versus our results in 2018. Then versus DAF as a whole, and then versus the Queensland public service sector. Important to remember that, you know, with any survey like this, the more people we get involved, the better. The people involved from one year to the next may change, and so you do get a little bit of noise in there. And generally, the feedback has been that anything 4 percentage points or more is a significant change. Anything less than that, you wouldn't put too much stock in unless there's part of an ongoing trend. Now, so you can see there that generally as a whole, apart from the two ones around agency engagement and anti-discrimination, there hasn't been too much change at all. So we'll spend a little bit of time on each of these with a little bit more detail about the key questions driving into them, what's driving those factors. As a whole, we're doing a little bit better than DAF, apart from workload and health. And we're doing better than the Queensland public sector apart from anti-discrimination. So they're the high-level results, and I'll have some more high-level results around our work climate, how we're feeling about that in a minute too. But what I'm going to do now is we'll go into the detailed questions, or some detailed questions that feed into this. So next slide, please. So what we've got is first we're going to have a look at the top and bottom 5 for ASQ. And the first one is staff saying I'm satisfied with opportunities available for career development. So a little bit of a jump up there, and also around access to the relevant learning and development opportunities. So both at that 4 percentage point increase, and both above DAF and certainly above the Queensland public sector. So they're positive responses, but just bear those two in mind, because towards the end, we've got some DAF specific questions. So the Working from Queensland survey is a whole of Queensland government survey. We have little influence on how it's put together, the questions, how it's actually run, and how it's reported. But we do have an opportunity where we put in some DAF specific questions for our staff. And those two there contradict basically what the DAF responses are. So we'll talk about that when we get to that thing. That question. The next three, getting towards some level of significance. So people in my work group work together flexibly, and people in my work group share diverse ideas, develop innovative solutions. So obviously we want those going in the right direction. And my work contributes positively to my quality of life. So they're all in the right direction. So let's just go through them one at a time. So at -5 percentage points, we've got I feel a strong personal attraction to my organisation. So this is one of those questions that contributes to the agency engagement. Still better than DAF in the public service sector, but a concern. Next one is cultural background is not a barrier to success in my organisation, and we've got a 5 percentage point drop in that area there. Obviously not good. The next one is my organisation inspires me to do the best in my job. 6 percentage point drop, again, not good. And the last two, or second last one, people are treated fairly consistent in my workplace, again, a drop. Still better than DAF as a whole, but we don't want to see any of these things going backwards. And the last one is my performance is assessed against clear criteria, so a 10 percentage point increase. So one of the problems with these is that we've got a fairly significant number of people contributing to these surveys. And one of the things that myself and the relevant general managers and the directors will be doing is that we have a great ability to dive into these questions and see where they're coming from, be it a geographic location or a particular group, and try and then it's more easily trying to understand what's driving these if we can identify any factors. So sometimes it's easy to see what might be driving them. Sometimes it's difficult, but it's a lot more difficult at the whole of DAF and then also at the ASQ level. So they're the biggest reductions we've received, and quite significant there. So this is where this is another sort of high level stuff. We've got workplace climate indices. So again, multiple questions feeding into these. And if you're looking at versus 2008, not too great a change there. Probably the only, the fairness and trust one dropping away a little bit. So, not too big a change there. If you look at people and relationships, 83% positive, a 1% drop. Again, a very high level thing. My own personal, sort of benchmark that I have is I like to see certainly the negative ones, well below 20, and we've got 18% there in terms of effectiveness and innovation getting up to that level. So that's a bit of a concern there, even though it is neutral. We still haven't been making any positive change in that particular area. Okay, so as I said, with those sort of high level ones, there's a number of questions that contribute to how they're assessed. What we've got now is got a lot of what they call the top 5 drivers. You'll see that this is a bit of a snapshot coming out of the software that we have to interrogate the system, and you can look at, there's more questions that contribute to these, but these are the top ones. So this is our agency engagement, 65% overall positive, a drop if you look on the left-hand side versus 2018 of 4 and 8 percentage points better than the Queensland public sector. So this is the results we were looking at before, but these are the questions that are contributing to it. So again, my organisation is well managed, a little bit, not much change there with 1 percentage point. All things to how satisfied your current job, relatively high, 79% positive, but 3 percentage point reduction. Leadership is of high quality, not as great as it could be. So we've got basically 85% of people saying it's either good or neutral, but still 14% saying it's not. In my organisation, leadership operates at a high level of integrity, 8% of people saying it doesn't, but at least that's a 2 percentage point increase. So, and then my organisation is committed to developing its employees, and 14% of people disagreeing with that. So those are the drivers, industry engagement, not too much change there at all. Generally, I suppose the results aren't too bad, apart from the top one where it's my organisation is well managed, because we've only got 6% of people agreeing with that and 14% disagreeing, with almost a third being neutral. So that's a little bit of a concern that senior management will obviously be looking at. I've got a few of these to run through. So this is the top drivers of workload and health. We'll try and get through them pretty quickly. Again, a 1 percentage point increase versus 2018, 40% agreeing positively, but a fairly large chunk fairly neutral overall. So these are the top 5 drivers of this question. Work-life balance, 14% disagreeing with it. So that again is a concern. The next couple, not too much change there in terms of workplace culture, supporting people to achieve a good work-life balance. So that's a positive at 75%, agreeing, although it's a little percentage points down. How satisfied are people with their current job? Pretty good results there, although again, not the trend we want to be seeing, or the direction we want to be seeing. My work contributes positively to my quality of life. While it's a positive 3% up, it's from a low base of only 57% agreeing. So it's starting to move in the right direction, but a long way to go. And a positive one is that, almost 3/4 believing we have the authority that we need to do our job effectively. So that's a positive one there. But still 10%, 1 in 10 of us not thinking that's the case. So, and that's the beauty of one of these surveys. You get the whole scope of how everyone who completes the survey is feeling. Top 5 drivers of organisational fairness. So we dropped 2 percentage points relative to last year, but we're well above the Queensland public service sector. Most of those, the top 4 there, fairly static, but the bottom one is a 4 percentage point increase, and I think that's significant. My organisation motivates me to help it achieve its objectives, so related to resourcing, and there's a specific question around that. So overall, organisational fairness was one of those ones where we didn't score very well, and you can see there that the greens are not that high, so we're 56, 64, 61, 62, 57%, and we've got a fairly large neutral chunk there. So we'd like to be behaving, demonstrating, so we've got more staff saying, well, actually we agree, rather than being a little bit neutral around how they're managed, whether we're committed to developing our employees, and so forth. This is generally one where ASQ does score well. This is around the drivers of my work group. So this is the more intimate sort of question, I suppose. How's the work group which you operate is going? We've got a couple of positive moves in the right direction, and the last one just a 1 percentage point increase, but extremely high starting points there. So that's the real positive about this. So people are feeling as though in their work environment, the first one there is that they share diverse ideas to help come up with innovative solutions. So again, that's a positive one. People in my work group work together so that flexible working needs can be achieved, but at the same time meeting our business needs. So for me, that's a good one to help addressing the work-life balance. People in my work group are committed to workplace safety. So again, 90% positive there, so that's really great. Because to me, that's a really important one. There's another, I think it's one of the whole of DAF ones around work health and safety is nowhere near as good as that. So just bear that in mind. And then we've got my work group always tries to improve its performance. That to me is a key one. And we've got 83% saying yes, 10% neutral. And we hope to reduce that 8%. We have had a 2% percentage point increase. So that's a positive. And the last one is people in my work group work effectively with others in the agency to deliver services to customers. So, we're working together and we're committed to delivering to our end customers. So, high level, a fairly static -1 percentage point increase. So that's pretty good. So I really like that, my work group one, and that shows within the environment where people are working, they're very positive about it. This is our managers. So what do we think about our managers? And there's various levels of management throughout the organisation, obviously. So, and this, no green here, and we've got a few reds, and one of them at that -4%. We overall dropped from 2018 by 1 percentage point, but still above the Queensland public service sector. Not that necessarily should be our benchmark, but it is one benchmark. The first thing is about productive conversation. So that might be weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. But we're certainly looking to have those on a regular basis, 72% agreeing they're happening. And this is only in the past 12 months. So at least if we're doing PDAs, we should be doing when we set up the PDA and when we review it midway through. And I would hope staff are having more conversations than just that. But we've got 17% neutral, 11%, 1 in 10 of us saying no, that they haven't had a productive conversation with the manager in 12 months. So I think all of us as managers have to take note of that. Next one is my manager proactively discusses flexible work arrangements with my work group. So 12% saying no and 25%, a quarter being neutral. I would sort of hope that, the flexible work arrangements, that's been coming pretty strongly from high up through future DAF, and that we'll certainly be trying to promote that as an opportunity there. If staff think it's not being discussed with them or not aware of the opportunities, they certainly should be raising it with their manager or with their HR contact around that, because they certainly are some great opportunities to try and help balance up our work-life balance issues through flexible work arrangements. The third one is I receive useful feedback on my performance, And you would think that links very strongly to the first one around having productive conversations, and the scores are pretty similar, so that sort of makes sense. The fourth is I'm encouraged to make suggestions about improving work practice and services, and it's good to see that that's 75% agreeing with that, although 1 in 10 again not believing that they're encouraged to make those suggestions. And I certainly would encourage people to have those discussions directly with their manager or their director, GM, or myself if they've got suggestions around how to make things work better. Certainly management does not have all the answers. And the last one is my senior manager demonstrates honesty and integrity. So while we've only got a little bit of red there, we've still got 1 in 5 people being a little bit being a bit neutral around that. So that certainly is something that all senior managers need to be doing, demonstrating honesty and integrity. And if people are aware of where that's not happening, then they should be flagging that with another manager or HR around that. So hopefully we'll be seeing an improvement in that rather than the 3 percentage point drop we've got this year. Job empowerment. So again, another one we generally do pretty well in. We did drop 2 percentage points, but that's a bit of potentially noise, well above the Queensland public service sector. But you can see the bottom one there, we've dropped 4%, a couple of 3 percentage point increases in specific questions. The first one is my job gives me a feeling of personal accomplishment. 3/4 of people saying yes, 1 in 10 no. I enjoy the work in my current job, almost 80% saying yes, and 6% saying no. And that's a concern if people aren't enjoying their job, and you need to be talking with your manager around whether that's the current, just as a temporary thing, whether it's a workload, or what are the opportunities there to potentially change that. But in the end, we do have jobs we've got to do, and that's what we're paid for, to do specific jobs, and hopefully we're enjoying those jobs as we do it. The third one is there is all things considered, how satisfied with your current job. Not surprisingly, very similar to what in terms of enjoyment. The fourth is I get the opportunity to develop new and better ways of doing my job. Similar again, so that to me is a key element of empowerment. So hopefully, there are opportunities to provide feedback around how things could be done in better ways to do that. And the last one is I encourage to make suggestions about improving work processes and services, and that links very similar to the one above it. Okay, so these are the DAF specific questions that I spoke to you about. So you can see here, starting from top to bottom, a very, very big change. So these aren't ASQ specific responses. These are, all ASQ specific responses to the DAF specific questions. And you can see there we've got the last column about versus 2018, and there are a couple of significant negative changes there. So let's just go through them one at a time. I'm trusted to undertake my work, so not dissimilar to some of the other questions we had there. My next one is my manager support for my professional development. So I think similar scorings to what some of the related questions were earlier. I feel valued for the work I do. 3/4 staff saying yes, and we do value the work that our staff do. Next one is I've had productive conversations with my manager. So question as before, so 3/4. Then we get to the first really big significant drop, and I know that the Board of Management, there'll be similar results coming through for agriculture, and I expect for the rest of the department as well. The Board of Management has been active in terms of communicating with staff, so staff only 60% feeling they are, and getting towards a third saying pretty neutral. So that's been a fairly significant drop there. So that's a bit disappointing. Then we get on to providing opportunities to improve work-life balance and caring about our health and well-being. So not a significant change there. Senior leaders in your work group spent more time and effort to engage staff in the past 12 months. A little bit of a drop-off there, and only about half committing to that. So as in a lot of things, communication is key, and taking the time to make sure that we're engaging with everyone. So there's a lot of lessons in here for myself and other managers. My work group is adequately resourced to deliver quality services, so quite low, only 50%, and almost getting up towards that third, saying that they don't believe they're adequately resourced. And I can understand where sometimes with our budgetary pressures where that will be coming from. And particularly with an ASQ, we have the drive to get external funding to do the sort of work that we do. The second last one there, DAF has a high priority on offering, promoting opportunities for career development training. And so a 13 percentage point decrease and only 40% positive, 40% neutral, and almost 20% negative. So, and that's the one that I struggle a little bit with. The earlier two questions I flagged around career development and training, very different responses. And I have spoken to a couple of people around, well, how are we getting something like this? And the only real sort of explanation that we were able to come up with was the fact that the earlier questions related specifically asked, the person answering as it related to them, where this is a more generic DAF as a whole has a high priority on offering, promoting opportunities for career development. So perhaps people are looking at this through a slightly different lens, but I'd be interested if people have got any insights as to why the results to this question and the other two are so significantly different. And then we went on to the last DAF specific question, which is around work is being done to consolidate workplace change, means DAF is functioning more efficient, transparently. No change, but not a great result there. 20% saying no, and almost half being fairly neutral. So I suspect we haven't had too much workplace change in the last 12 months, 2 years, and I'm thinking perhaps that's why there's such a large neutral response there. People not necessarily one way or the other may not be have been affected by workplace change recently. But that's just my interpretation of those. I'm very keen to get some other feedback from staff around what they might be thinking. Then we'll go on to the next slide, and we've got a slightly different approach here. So these are these heat maps, and this one is for all of DAF. So you can see there in that on the first sort of grouping there, we've got those high-level areas, so agency engagement, job empowerment, as we showed previously for ASQ. The first column there is the whole of DAF response. So we've had 1,600 respondents across all of DAF, and the score for that particular area down there. And then what's happened is the department has been broken up by regions, and obviously where there's a red score, it's 5% less than the benchmark. Where it's white, it's plus or minus 5% of the benchmark, which is the whole of ag, and the green is greater than 5%. So, basically it means green is good, white's okay, red is not so good. In the last column there, you've got no value. That's obviously where staff have selected, and quite a large portion of staff have selected not to identify their location. So don't worry about that last red column, apart from perhaps the fact why people haven't identified the location. I hope it's not because they think it will identify who they might be. Completely anonymous. We only get results reported where we have more than 10 survey respondents. So effectively we've lost the insights from those 136 people there. But I still think there's lots to be learnt from here. So obviously with the red areas, Brisbane North, Ipswich and the Logan Bay Desert areas needing a fair bit of attention to try and see what's driving those level responses. So, from DAF, which groups are they, and potentially a little bit more location information. And you can see some areas are doing quite well. Central Queensland doing well. Then you've got Mackay, Isaac, Whitsundays again doing well. Queensland Outback doing very well also. So it's one of the bits of information that we've got there to start, zeroing in on, where are there specific regional issues that may be cutting across business groups as such. So I think that's a little bit of useful information. And the next one, Greg, is even more interesting. So again, all of DAF, and this is age comparison. Now in this particular one, the third column is where people haven't identified their age. So they haven't been able, there's 50 people, so less people concerned about putting down their age and their location, significantly less people. So that first red column, we just ignore that. But so it depends what you read into this. So in the second column, we've got the DAF results. Obviously, young staff are coming here, very keen, very enthusiastic, and somehow we're turning into grumpy old men by the end of the process. So we could perhaps have a discussion around that offline, around what might be driving that. But it is very interesting, and it's great to see young staff being so positive. What it does say is one way to improve our overall results is to employ more young people. So that's how to manage the survey program. Okay, so look, I'll open up for questions, but these are some that we've received previously. And I just thought I'd run through them. While if you've got a question, I think we're just going to be typing in there and Greg will read it out for us. The first is around boosting internet speed at DAF research facilities. So this is not necessarily an easy one to answer. I sit on the ICTC, which is the IT committee. We meet on a monthly basis. And one of the things we look at each of those meetings is the level of usage of all our locations where we've got staff. So that's not just the ASQ sites, but all the DAF sites. There are some there that have consistently high usage or high loads. One of the problems is that the IT group are rolling through these high use sites progressively, looking to upgrade them. There are one or two sites where it is just not possible to provide any increase in speed, and that generally relates to the sort of the size of the connection that is feasible. So the pipeline or the internet pipeline running past the facility actually is the constricting factor, that rather than anything we've got actually on site ourselves. So in some instances, ITP have been looking to do working with where we're on shared sites. We've been upgrading on a shared basis. Where we've got our own sites, obviously it's a lot easier to do, but in some situations it's beyond our control as to what we can actually do to upgrade them. But all I can say is it's something that is being monitored carefully on a monthly basis, and where possible, ITP are running through a program of work to upgrade those. And one of the challenges is that as we use digital information, we're transferring it more and more. That's going to potentially lead to increased demand on our internet pipeline. The second one is around what I can see the lead indicators for staff motivation. So look, I think it's first and foremost, people work for DAF because they have a passion for agriculture. They certainly work for ASQ because they have a passion for agriculture. They want to be working within or with the industry to try and make things better. And I think the two other motivators, but the second one is around, we believe we're actually having a real impact. So it's not just that we're working within agriculture, but we actually think we're doing something worthwhile. I think if we don't believe we're doing something worthwhile, that's when we start to lose motivation. We don't enjoy our jobs as much. And I think the third one is there that our efforts and the job that we're doing is actually acknowledged, certainly internally by our management. That's a key factor, and also by industry as well. So three things. I think staff start passionately, and I think if you go back to that heat map around the age one, I think that's one of the factors driving that the greenness and the young people there. I think motivation, if we're having an impact, it helps to maintain our motivation. And if our efforts are acknowledged, our impacts are acknowledged, that again reinforces our motivation. So I think they're about lead indicators, but I think they're the drivers for staff motivation. Third question, many staff responded that there is too much red tape, and it's posed to the broader audience, what does the audience consider red tape? So someone's out there asking that question. And across the business groups, the discussions I've had with the general managers and the directors, this certainly, again, was one of the big things. what we would like to do is we will be sending out to all ASQ staff just an email looking for staff to respond to in the new year. And what we would like people to do is just nominate what is their number one red tape issue, what rubs you the most in terms of it, because we'd like to get an idea. There's some things that we can actually push and hope to do something about. There's some things we can't or reasonably expect to achieve too much. So we'll be doing that new year. So have a think about it. We just want everyone to put in their biggest gripe, and we'll be ranking those and sort of starting at the top, rating them. Do we think we can do something about it? What's the chance of being successful? Or, you know, that's a government requirement. You know, we have to convince DPC and it just becomes too difficult. So that'll be something we'll be looking to do in the new year. Next question is, will you cover some of the time series results presented at senior leaders? I haven't, just because of there's so much information here, and it's about trying to keep things to a reasonable level. We've been going for about 30 minutes now, and I didn't want to sit on it, but general managers, directors should be making available the specific information for their group. If you want to see time series around specific questions, just ask your director or general manager for it. If you want to see some of it at ASQ, you've got specific questions you'd like to see the time series results, just let me know and we'll dig those results out for you. From memory, the survey seems to have a lot of design flaws, repetitive questions, options for comments, and this has been a little bit chopped off, this question. I think there was a little bit more around that as well. I just can't remember what it is. Maximum text. Look, as I said before, we don't design the survey, and I know that HR have tried to have more input into how it's actually structured and so forth. There will be some repetitiveness of the questions because the DAF specific questions certainly do mirror some of the general questions, but they've tried to be a little bit more targeted, you know, really what we're after. And the issue is that some of the questions have changed over time and they've drifted towards the DAF questions, so there is some repetitiveness there. In terms of open-ended questions, I think there's just a general reluctance at Public Service Commission to do that in terms of how they'd actually handle those sorts of questions. But what I would encourage people who don't feel as though the opportunity was there, they didn't have the opportunity to comment, is to, if you're comfortable, have that discussion with your manager, have that discussion with your director or your general manager. If you want to get on the line to me, I'm more than happy to have a discussion by email or by phone around anything you think that didn't have the opportunity to cover. There was an email we did get, and I think it might have been linked to this, around how representative of these results of everyone, you know, particularly those people who didn't participate, and was there any intention to do follow-up work to validate the results we've got. Look, the bottom line is the survey is the opportunity for everyone to contribute to, you know, providing feedback to management and the government as a whole around it. There is no intention as a whole to validate these. It's extremely good survey results. If you were doing this commercially, you'd be over the moon if you had the sort of the numbers, the percentages that we're actually getting. There may be examples when we're doing our deep dive where we need to do more follow-up, but that'll be very much more targeted around that. And the last question is, why are so many jobs based in Brisbane and not in the regions? I think some of that is historical. There certainly has been in the past a drive to centralise particularly some jobs. That is not the case now, but that doesn't change overnight. Certainly the Director General is very keen that where we're looking at jobs that we look to see whether they can be done in the regions, and certainly her thinking is that, you know, we should be advertising as many jobs as possible that can be done from anywhere. The reality is that's not always the case. They can't be done there from all spaces. Some are geographically focused, some you need to be within a team. But it's certainly, all I can say is it's from the DG down, the focus is on trying to get as many jobs out into the regions as possible. Look, just a couple of other things. So Human Rights Act training, I know I sent that email out to everyone, and I think I probably had 100 people come back to me and say, I've done it. Here's the certificate. So apologies to all those staff who had to do that. But if you haven't done the Human Rights Act training, it comes into effect 1 January, so really important that we do it. So please, if you haven't, just take I think it's about 20 minutes, if that, to do before you take Christmas break. So just hope everyone didn't hear that. Look, you may or may not be aware, the budget timetable for next year is being brought forward. So for people who have to make contributions, there's a fair bit of pressure to get that done. And obviously that's made a little bit more difficult because of the fact that a lot of staff are away over the late December, Christmas and into January period. But if you do need to get information together, it's really important that we are proactive on this. Workplace health and safety. So I think the results are about 90% agreement that in their group that work health and safety is important. It will continue to be a priority for us. I think one of the key things, hopefully we're empowering, not just ASQ, but all of DAF staff to, with the message, if it's broken, cause it to be fixed. That may mean you do it yourself or you report it so someone else does it. And also, when we're particularly working in the field or on farms, if staff aren't feeling safe, they have the authority to actually say, no, I'm not feeling safe, I don't want to do this. So that will continue to be a focus for us going forward. And the last one I just wanted to touch on was around the ASQ communication. So I hope everyone is aware that we've got a team of 4 within AgriScience Queensland now who are dedicated to communicating the outcomes of our work, the activities we're doing both internally and externally. So we've got Heidi Parks doing Horton Forestry, we've got Jody doing crop and food science, and we've got Felicity McIntosh doing animal science, and Renee Templeton is sort of working across all of ASQ within the directorate here. So I just want to flag this because I think the team is having a real big impact in terms of our Facebook postings, our situation reports going through to the DG and the Minister, our media releases, our intranet, and all the things that they're doing. But I just wanted to remind people that they are there. So if in your work, if you've got significant activity happening, a field day or an event, or you've had a bit of success in your project and you think it's worth talking about, they're there to help you get that information both out to industry, but also to some extent, as importantly, to up internally to the DG, to the Minister's office, to the whole of government. So it's really important that we manage upwards as well as outwards in terms of the effectiveness of the work we do. So, look, that's it for me. Are there any other questions, Greg, before I sort of sign off?
No, there aren't. Thank you.
Okay. Look, the other thing I just wanted to say about the workplace health and safety, just remembered, I did see that email that I sent out, and I see Sinead sent out exactly the same email. Good communication here. But we did have an incident with a staff member this week where there's possible heat stress, and it is really hot out there, so we just need to make sure that everyone is taking care. There's some really common sense guidelines in there about how to do things to reduce the risk of heat stress. But if in doubt, make sure you tell someone straight away. In this particular case, the staff member was sort of not feeling well and waited a couple of hours, and as soon as he told someone, those staff made sure he was taken to hospital. So we need to, there's nothing wrong with, feeling the heat. I certainly do. So if you're feeling faint, if you're not feeling well, make sure you let other staff know. So that's it for me for 2019. I just want to thank everyone for their effort throughout the year. I spoke about the passion of staff who join, who work for DAF, and what motivates us. And I think that passion, that motivation comes right throughout the year. So very thankful for the ability to work with people who are so motivated, so passionate about what they do, and who are committed to delivering to the community, to the industries that we work with. And it's been a tough year in many ways. We've had the northwest flooding, we've had ongoing drought, and then we've had fires. I'm hoping and praying we have a quiet Christmas and New Year, and I'm hoping that everyone has a very Merry Christmas. Everything goes to plan, and enjoy the time with your friends and family. So thank you very much, Greg, for sorting this all out for me and making it happen. and hopefully everyone's had a great year, and we look forward to an even better year next year. So thank you very much.